Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast, where we help young athletes, parents, and coaches build strong, resilient, and high-performing athletes for sport and life. I'm Trent head strength conditioning coach and founder of Inner Athlete. Each episode, we break down the training, mindset, and habits that actually matter, from strength and speed development to injury prevention, confidence, and long-term athletic growth. Whether you're a parent trying to support your child or an athlete chasing their potential, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's episode. Overtraining itself is by definition, is the chronic deviation of physiological homeostasis. So homeostasis is kind of like the state where no stress or anything like that, and it's where our body is able to normally function. Overtraining means is we have the lack of ability to get into homeostasis. Yep. So it means we're overstimulated, stress response is way too high on a constant basis, and then homeostasis is where is kind of considered like the rest and digest, where we rebuild, recover, and return to a state where we're able to perform in that state. Now, some of the issues we can get with overtraining is we have increased risk of injury, which is like soft tissue injuries and potentially hard tissue, because when we're overtrained, we actually have changes in our neural output in terms of movement competency. So if you have someone's tired, stressed, and fatigued over a long period of time and been training very long, we have altered movement patterns, and that can actually lead to a greater exposure. So they actually start to move more inefficiently.
And they start to adapt to those inefficiencies.
Correct, if there hasn't been adequate rest and recovery at play. We can also have irritability and depression-like symptoms as well, which is obviously a problem. Impaired sleep, which obviously we know is a pretty standard one, but the biggest one is obviously a decrease in performance and recovery. With that, what we do, especially for sports where there's a lot of variables you have to control, like there's a lot of outside variables with team sports. When it comes to individual sports, there's a lot of variables that we can control. And one of those variables obviously is sleep, nutrition, training volume. They're very controllable. And from the swimming club that we work with, Melbourne Swimming Club, we use a wellness survey. And I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast before, and we can actually see where they are. So how they're feeling overall, nutrition, hydration, sleep, soreness is one we actually do measure. And then overall we use vigor. Well, vigor and overall are kind of the same thing. What we do is we determine where they're actually at, and then we always determine what a baseline is, what a 7 out of 10 is, and a 7 out of 10 might be them feeling really pretty good subjectively. Ideally, we want them like a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, and how ready are they to perform? If they're a 3 or 4 and been like that for a couple of days, we know something's potentially up, and we just maybe need just to taper and back things off, and it even depends on where we are within the training box. So if they're in the middle of their training phase and they've got 3 or 4 days, we might just back them off just a little bit more, because it's going to take them a bit more time if we continue on the same track. So if they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, their super compensation phase might be a little bit too long, depending on where the competition is. The other part is the monotony of that. If they're constantly doing the same thing day in, day out, so school, training, gym, they might need something just to kind of help break away from that. Now, I saw a post on Instagram the other day. He was talking about, in my degree, when I was doing strength and conditioning, he's a D1 coach, strength and conditioning coach. I didn't learn how to play dodgeball with my Division 1 athletes. Never learned that. I was like, it's a fair point, because we're talking about just the training side. And then sometimes if we go too far down that training side continuum, they're going to feel tired. You're going to, like, the ability to actually work with the athletes is going to be quite limited. And if it's quite limited, how are you expecting them to be able to perform on game day? Where ideally, do we want them to be 100% on game day? Yeah, of course, but we know that's not the reality. If they're 80 to 90% feeling pretty good about themselves, bouncing around, we know we're in a pretty good state. And I always say to my swimmers, are you going to be 100% for your races? No. But what we can do is making sure that you're in a state where you are consistent at 80 or 90%. You'd rather be that consistent, and making sure that and they'll allow you to progress over time
because if you're 100% for one race and you're 50% for the next race, we have a lack of consistency. As long as we know that you're generally moving based on your times, the feedback from the coaches, the way that you're feeling as well, and even from the gym side also, you're generally moving in the right direction, you're 89, like 90, 95% feeling good, more than likely you're going to put a lot of effort into your race. And not every race is going to feel like your best race. But we want to make sure it's consistent. It's consistent throughout your career, essentially.
Yeah.
But obviously it depends on what you're focusing on, especially as you get older. The other part is, when it comes to the burnout side, it's funny, we've got the social media bans, very topical in Australia at the moment, is sleep. Now, we know sleep is a big part of the recovery phase, and kids say they might get 8 hours sleep, but how restful is that sleep? Are they actually falling asleep, staying asleep? How long does it take for them to get to sleep? Is it consistent, or is there some nights where they're actually waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning on a consistent basis as well? Now, for us, we know a lack of sleep over a long period of time increases the likelihood of injury. It also obviously affects, it's kind of like a perpetual cycle of affecting, increasing the likelihood of burnout as well. And then we also know it also increases the likelihood of soft tissue injuries, because we do have these changes in the way that they move forward. We have overload in some areas, underload in other areas. So how do we actually manage that? Now, sometimes it's more just backing off the training volume. And actually, it is a little bit of trial and error with a lot of athletes. General rule of thumb is, I'd say, back off at least 30%. So if they're swimming for 2 hours, take off, whatever 30% is of that, which I don't know off the top of my head. Maybe just cut it down to a 90-minute session in that case, which is probably, that's about 25%. So maybe make an 80-minute session for them as well. So get them out of the pool and do that over a couple of days and monitor them over time. From that side.
Yeah, 100%. And some things we can't control, but we try and control the controllables essentially. And what can we do in here that can either prevent further burnout, or can at least maintain the state that they're in? Especially with kids, when they have school going on, they have competitions, they have long sporting seasons, stress can definitely fluctuate and plays a big factor in their recovery and how they perform. And so if they're not sleeping as much, if they're stressed about other things, then what can we do in the gym that can how can we control the outcomes that are within reach, just within here?
The other part is and it goes back to all the other topics we just mentioned before, is adult-driven training models. So we're treating a lot of teenagers and young kids like they're mini adults, where they don't have those foundational movement patterns in place. So, and that's probably part of the reason why they're actually feeling a bit tired and fatigued, is because when you have to learn something new, it is quite straining as well. But if you have a general foundational movement patterns and strength, or a base level of strength and power and speed already there, it actually allows them to accumulate skills faster. And there's a research many years ago looked at girls in kicking ability, in the AFL, I think it was an AFL study. They looked at, on average, the girls that were generally stronger are the ones that actually acquired the skill of kicking easier, and they're able to kick for further distances. So it's not about necessarily just getting them to just do the skill itself. It needs to be complementary to doing some sort of strength work to acquire these skills a lot faster as well, because it does improve, strength training improves coordination, power output, force output, impulse, a whole variety of things. But also it creates what I like to call a strength reserve as well, which is another topic for another day, which I think I've spoken about a few times actually. And then we're going to talk about something that you've mentioned before, is that passion versus pressure. So in the exploration that builds passion. So talk to us a little bit about that, what you actually mean by the trial and error and, failing and making changes moving forward.
Yep. So, to develop your passion, a lot of us growing up, you don't just wake up one day and you know what your passion is. So that passion is through exploring different avenues, different sports in this case, expressing different skills, and through that trial and error, you then develop a passion in a particular skill, a particular field. That goes through anything, career-wise, interpersonally, physically with sports as well. And that's when you're passionate about something, you express it a lot more. You have a greater investment and interest in developing yourself in the best way possible for expressing those skills. And so if we are not developing those passions for the things that we enjoy doing before we're asked to perform, then how do we expect to pursue something long term and be consistent with it if we haven't developed that love and enjoyment for it in the first place?
I think a big part of it is the buy-in and skin in the game. I think that's the biggest part that needs to be there from a lot of kids, is developing that buy-in. And I've invested this time, energy, and effort, and I'm enjoying it, and I want to continue to build upon that moving forward. And that, I think that's what helps to build passion. If we just quit something and don't overcome it. So say, for example, I saw a interesting video of this guy who runs like an academy somewhere around the world, and in this kid that just quit mid-drill, and then the coach says, like, all right, let's pick up the cones, and then just kind of like sulked for a little bit, and then got told again. It's like, all right, we're done. And he goes to pick up the cones afterwards, and it's like, I thought it was quite interesting from the kid to have that reaction. Like, as soon as he failed, it just kind of like burst down into tears. And I'm like, that's part of the exploration of development.
If you're getting value from the Inner Athlete podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more parents and young athletes find the right guidance and keeps this podcast growing. Back to the show.
You will only get better over time by spending more time and energy and by investing in the sport itself, and then you'll have a lot more passion for it later on down the track. And I think a lot of kids want the early gratification of easy success, as we kind of mentioned before earlier on, and they don't want to actually put the time and energy effort required. So they like the idea of being successful, but they don't like the idea of the work required to become successful. And I think that's what it really comes down to at the end of the day with anything. If you're not willing to put the time, energy, and effort into it, you just like the idea of being successful. And unfortunately, the reality is majority of people will not become successful in their sport in terms of playing professional or anything like that until they're doing a lot of the work behind the scenes in order to become successful and working on those areas and becoming, not just working harder, but actually working a lot smarter as well. You cannot do the same thing and expect a different result. That's just insanity. Obviously, by definition, that's what insanity is. You just continue to do the same thing, expecting something different. You yourself have to change.
Yeah.
Right, and I'll give you an example of this business of the Inner Athlete. Right, I started out of a commercial gym, and it was just me doing the semi-private training, and working with youth athletes, and some Gen Pop as well. And it's like, all right, if I kind of had to change because the environment wasn't allowing me to do what I needed to do, so I had to change as a person in terms of what I did and how I operated and how I thought about things moving forward. And obviously, now we're in the current facility of when I moved across. And now, moving forward, the Inner Athlete has gone through so many different changes, but the only way it's gone through the changes if I actually changed. If I wanted this place to be the place I wanted to be, the number one place in Melbourne for youth athlete development, I have to change myself fundamentally, right? But I'm not going to experience that success for years down the track. And I know that, right? But I know it's going to take a lot of time, energy, and effort. And then obviously bringing on people on board that are in line with that goal as well. They want to be a part of something where, we are developing youth athletes. We think outside the box, but you're independent thinkers at the same time as well, where you can do your own thing and you're not boxed into this one thing, because 9 times out of 10, we've heard stories when they do that certain thing and it all falls to bits, right? You need to be flexible. You need to be like bamboo. You need to be strong, robust, but you got to be able to move from time to time as well. But you have to stay in alignment with your purpose in that sense. And that takes time to develop that passion, because you have to go through, I guess, because we get coaching as well, like, is going through the desert. It's going to be lonely. It's going to be hard. It's going to take energy and effort, and you feel like you just beating your head against the wall. And there's so many times where I felt like I was beating my head against the wall from a business perspective, and a lot of athletes will. That's just a part of the process, unfortunately. When you make it out the other side, it feels so much more lighter, but you really respect the process of becoming successful. And I think a lot of kids these days have to go through that process of the desert, where it's lonely, it's hard work, you're in the rain. I remember during the lockdowns, right, was a prime example. I followed this guy, Darian Barr, I can't remember his name on Instagram, but he was he's a track coach, but he talks about change of direction and acceleration fundamentally different to everyone else, and it's all just creating levers. And I was like, all right, I'll just try this out. And then it's like, oh my god, I felt so much better for doing it, because I felt like I was using less energy and I felt faster. And now I'm applying that to you, Jack, all the other coaches here, and then also to all the athletes and all the various programs, and getting them to understand this basic, it's physics at the end of the day, just creating levers to better express your ability to generate power in your sport. Kind of going off topic, and that passion was developed because I had a problem to solve. I didn't know who to go to at the time, because you couldn't really speak to you could speak to people, but it was different during the lockdowns. I trialed it, implemented it, got the feeling, I understood it, and then started to apply it, and I saw other coaches doing it as well. And a lot of times you're not going to get that positive feedback until way down the track as well. And I think it's what a lot of kids need to go through. They need to continue to harness their craft, continue to develop, ask questions of where their gaps are in their development, and fill in those gaps.
Well, I think it comes back to what you said initially in the beginning, where I think their passion is falsely tied to an outcome that's promised, rather than going through the process itself of becoming. Yeah, so when the outcome is promised earlier, and sometimes it's not guaranteed, but they market it that way, then their passion is tied to that outcome, which they don't understand then the process in which it takes to become truly successful in what they deem to be passionate in.
Yeah, and then the other part is, like you spoke about, the false sense of security. So the identity being tied up in their sport or the outcome. Now, this, I believe, can be quite detrimental in terms of the longer term development for kids. It's like, I didn't get selected for the squad, my life's over. I'm like, well, that's a bit deep, but wrong at the same time. But you talk them through it, and it's like, okay, what did you do wrong? Did you really find out what you needed to improve on? And it's like, no. It's like, how much of your heart was in it? Like, were you actually questioning what you needed to improve on? And were you seeking that feedback? If you don't have a coach that's not giving you feedback, speak to someone else, and then go get them to watch you and get feedback. Like, that's the important part. How do you know that you need to get better? Everyone knows they need to get better. In what?
Yeah.
Right? What do you need to get better in? And I think that's the fundamental part of asking those questions. Like, just before we had when the athletes come in with Millie, she's like, I asked her, it's like, all right, your knee's obviously feeling good, you're moving a lot better. All right, what do we need to move on moving forward? It's like, my shoulders. Okay, what about it? I struggle with this and this and this. And she showed me some footage. Like, she knew what the problem is. I just happened to open the door for her to step in and then answer the question. So we spoke about it. Okay, cool. I understand what you're talking about. It's like, obviously, I think because she does jazz and ballet, all right, we know what she needs to do. And it's like, okay, your shoulders come, they raise. As soon as you lift your arms, you use your traps, lift your arms up. And then you want to be as elegant and obviously nice, long neck. I've got a short neck in this position. Long neck, long arms. And it's like, okay, you're lifting your arms via your neck and your traps. Okay, or your upper traps. Okay, all right. It's funny, we just did an activation, and then her neck beforehand. Her neck was feeling stiff, tight. Did a quick activation just underneath the collarbone. It was really restricted, really tight. And then afterwards, she's like, oh, I feel so much better. I feel like I'm actually lifting through my shoulders and my neck is relaxed. I'm like, cool. That's one part of what we're going to do moving forward. And then to help you with the strength side, we're going to implement a couple of drills like lower trap raises, something else I can't remember off the top of my head. But that's going to help her moving forward. And then she's like, okay, cool, sweet.
Again, I think it's about creating that context.
Yeah.
And about asking the right questions. And I think kids sometimes don't know what questions to ask, but then our coaches giving the appropriate feedback or being open to giving feedback for them to be confident enough to ask those questions to then create the context to then improve moving forward.
And then layering it from that is we need to acknowledge when they're doing the right thing. So as coaches, we acknowledge when they score a goal. It's like, how did they do it? Like, what led to that point? What was done really well to get them to the point in the position to score the goal? Or for swimming, like, what did you do differently in the lead up to the outcome itself? I did this and this. I'm like, well, we've been working on that. Great. That you did really well. So now you can start to see, and that creates more buy-in and more, I guess, more drive for them to be like, hey, I do really well. I want to continue this. And then obviously they get that dopamine dump and all that jazz, which kind of keeps them in the sport. And dopamine obviously is that reward mechanism.
Yeah, reinforcing good habits, but also giving them the opportunity to recognize the habits that they're doing and the skills that they're portraying. Because if they're always constantly thinking about what they need to work on, then how are they supposed to acknowledge that they're doing the right thing in the first place?
Yeah, and we want them to be present in their training.
Yeah.
I think that's the other part as well.
Create their own success.
Yeah, if they're not present in their own training, and it's like, are they just turning up just because they got told to come in and the parents dropped them off and, you know, the parents paying the fees, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, we want the ROI to happen with the kids. Like, we want them to be invested in their own development. We're obviously invested as coaches in their development, but are they invested?
It creates drive and it creates a foundation. They have intent behind their training now.
Yes, and the intent is going to create the change.
Yeah.
Or create a greater likelihood of change. It's not guaranteed, unfortunately. But they have to put the work in order to do that. So if you just kind of say to the girls, like for the soccer girls here, as an example, I just want you to work on juggling. I say, okay, cool. It's like they kind of go through it, yeah. But we want to make it a bit more deliberate. So they might do juggling against the wall to work on their touch. So they might receive a long ball, they need to work on their touch. Okay, now you're making it a bit more deliberate on the thing that they're not specifically strong at in the game. So now you're creating more context for them. And I think that's, like you said before, context will drive the competency side, or help to develop the competency side to help to drive the confidence side moving forward, because you're now filling in the gaps of where the lack of development has been.
And see, now success changes in their minds. And so now it's not only tied to a single outcome, but they're now more invested in the process of those small successes, because they compound over time, and now their idea of success is completely different to what they initially thought.
And they're focused on the present as well. They're focused on the now. What can they change right now that's going to lead to a better likelihood of success down the track?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so simple, isn't it? Yeah. Simple to talk about, hard to actually execute with a lot.
Harder to implement.
Yeah, it's very hard to
especially
implement.
in the moment.
That's a wrap for part 1 of this episode on the Inner Athlete podcast. We've covered some incredible insights today, but there's still so much more to come. Make sure to tune in to part 2 for the rest of the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, and share it with your network to help us reach even more listeners like you. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in part 2.